All right, hello. Well, this is Mr. Ippolito, and in our last video, we went over questions 1 through 50 of the USCIS Civics exam, and so now we're going to go over questions 51 through 100 so we can finish this off and help you get ready for the upcoming Civics exam. All right, so question number 51 asks, what are two rights of everyone living in the United States? So what this means is regardless of your citizenship status, whether you're a citizen or not, you've got a green card, even if you're here illegally, if you're an undocumented immigrant, everyone in this country gets these rights, and here's what they are. Things like freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, the right to petition, freedom of religion, the right to bear arms. There are other constitutional rights as well. For example, the right to remain silent if you're under arrest. So pretty much any of the Bill of Rights freedoms or the protections that you have under the Bill of Rights are available to everyone living here in the United States, regardless of your citizenship status. Okay, question 52. What do we show loyalty to when we say the Pledge of Allegiance? We talked about this in class, of course. We pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. So we pledge allegiance to the United States and to the flag, right? Both the flag and the republic. The United States is the republic for which it stands. Number 53, one promise you make when you become a United States citizen. There are a few. Here's the list. You give up loyalty to other countries. You promise to defend the Constitution of the United States. You promise to obey the laws, serve in the United States military if needed, serve the nation in general, and of course be loyal to the new nation that you are now a citizen of. 54, how old do citizens have to be to vote for president? 18 or older, right? You remember, it used to be in most states the minimum age was 21, and since 1971 that has been lowered the voting age down to 18. 55, what are two ways that Americans can participate in their democracy? There are several ways. These are just a few. Of course, the number one answer is voting. You can join a political party or help with a political campaign, join a civic or community group, give an elected official your opinion on an issue, right? So you can write a letter to your member of Congress, your senator or your member of the House of Representatives. You can email them. You can call their office. I've done that before. You can either publicly support or oppose an issue or policy. If you get on social media and you express an opinion one way or the other on a particular public issue, policy issue, then you are participating in democracy. You can run for office yourself. You can run for political office, or write to a newspaper, or have your ideas published online. Your political viewpoints. Those are all ways that you can participate in our democracy. 56, the last day you can send in federal income tax forms. It's basically asking what is tax day in the United States, and that is April 15th. Next, when must all men register for the Selective Service? That is the military draft, the draft, which we have not had since 1975, but you have to register at age 18, and then you're eligible for the draft between 18 and 26. Number 58, what is one reason colonists came to America? We talked about this a lot when we were first learning about those push-pull factors, why immigrants, or why the original colonists, they were immigrants as well, why they came to Massachusetts and why they came to Virginia for things like freedom, political liberty, religious freedom, economic opportunity. If you just said the word gold, then I know that there are some people who want to answer that, then that would be fine as well. Number 59, who lived in America before the Europeans arrived? That was either the Native Americans or American Indians. Number 60, what group of people was taken to America and sold as slaves? Those were Africans, right? People from Africa were captured and enslaved on the west coast of Africa. So that's the answer to that. Number 61, why did the colonists fight the British? Well, they fought because they wanted their independence, right? Because of high taxation, because they didn't have self-government. Or you can also say just simply because they wanted their independence. 62, the author of the Declaration of Independence, of course, that is Thomas Jefferson. 63, when was the Declaration of Independence adopted? For this one, you need the month, the day, and the year. I don't ask for many where you need to know the month, day, and year, but on this one you do because it's probably the most important date in the history of the United States. That, of course, is July 4th, 1776. All right, 64. There were 13 original states. Name 3. Well, I would be impressed if you can name all 13, but of course you only need to name 3, so we'll just take a look at those. Remember, from north to south, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. Those are the 4 New England colonies, right, that which then became the New England states. New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, those were the middle colonies, right? Which became, I guess, the middle states, although we really don't use that term much. And then finally, the 5 southern colonies, which became our first 5 southern states: Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Okay. What happened at the Constitutional Convention? This, again, is not a trick question. They wrote the Constitution. Not a trick question at all. That's what happened at the Constitutional Convention. Other students have said they replaced the Articles of Confederation with the Constitution. That is a perfectly acceptable answer as well. They intended to fix the articles, but then ended up right. However, you can get into more detail if you want, as long as your answer is correct. Number 66, when was the Constitution written? For this one, you only need the year, and the year was 1787. Next, the Federalist Papers supported the passage of the U.S. Constitution. Name one of the writers. We're going to learn in another couple weeks, we're going to learn more about the Federalist Papers. Those 3 authors were James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay. If you would like to use their pen name, if you recall, we talked about how they wrote anonymously. They did not want to be identified, just in case one of them, mostly Hamilton, was disliked. They didn't want someone's name to get in the way of the ideas that were behind the Federalist Papers, right? So they went under the pen name of Publius, and it was only after the Constitution was ratified did they reveal the names of the actual authors who wrote them. 68, one thing Benjamin Franklin is famous for. He's famous for a lot of things. You could say the kite experiments with electricity. You could say he invented bifocals or the Franklin stove. These are the ones that the USCIS provides. He was a diplomat. He was our representative to France, the oldest member of the Constitutional Convention, our first postmaster general. You can visit the Benjamin Franklin Post Office in Philadelphia. It's very cool, in Franklin Court right there if you ever go to Philly. Also started the first free libraries in the United States as well. 69, the father of our country. That, of course, is George Washington. It's going to be the same answer for 70. Who was the first president? Again, George Washington. You can just say Washington, and we know who you're talking about. Number 71, the territory that the United States bought from France in 1803. That was in the presidency of Thomas Jefferson. Instantly, overnight, with one signing of a treaty, signing of a purchase, doubled the size of the United States. That is the Louisiana Purchase, right? You can call it Louisiana Territory, or you can just call it Louisiana. The French originally named that after King Louis, I believe probably Louis XIV of France. Number 72, name one war fought by the United States in the 1800s. So just important to distinguish between the 1800 wars and the 1900s wars. These are the War of 1812, Mexican-American War, the Civil War, and the Spanish-American War. We're going to learn 3 of those 4 wars in this class. And then, of course, the Spanish-American War you'll learn about in 11th grade history. Number 73, the U.S. war between the North and the South. That, of course, was the Civil War. In the South, they would call out the war between the states. We will learn all about the Civil War, end of 3rd quarter or beginning of 4th quarter in this class. Number 74, name one problem that led to the Civil War. Well, the number one answer is going to be slavery. And I need to reformat that slide. Slavery is the number one answer. Others might say that it was because of economic differences between the northern states and the southern states, or some may argue that it was states' rights, and those are valid reasons as well, but the number one reason was slavery. Number 75, one important thing that Abraham Lincoln did. The number one answer that I get from students all the time is he freed the slaves through the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, if you want to be more detailed or more specific, the Emancipation Proclamation didn't actually free all of the slaves. It only freed the slaves that were in territories that were still in rebellion, parts of the South that were not yet under Union control. So those parts of the country that were under Union control, that still had slavery, those slaves were not freed. We'll get more into that when we study the Civil War. But if you just said freed the slaves, then you're fine. 76, what did the Emancipation Proclamation do? Again, freed the slaves. And we'll talk more about that later. Number 77, what did Susan B. Anthony do? Really, the question could ask, what did she fight for? Because she fought for, not only for women's rights, that would be your number one answer, but fought for civil rights in general for all Americans, specifically for Americans who were underrepresented. Number 78, one war fought by the United States in the 1900s, started just in chronological order: World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and then finally the Persian Gulf War, which I mentioned to, I think, all my classes. I was around for that. I was in high school. I was a junior in high school when the Persian Gulf War broke out. Number 79, who was president during World War I? I told you in class, I like to sound out those W sounds when I say World War I because it was Woodrow Wilson. And you can just say President Wilson or just Wilson. He was our president during the First World War, also known as the Great War, because before there was World War II, they would not have called it World War I. They called it the Great War or the World War. Of course, we now distinguish between the two because there were two. But anyway, Woodrow Wilson, World War I. Number 80, the president during the Great Depression and World War II, that was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Franklin D. Roosevelt is also commonly known by his initials FDR, and so if you answer this question with FDR, you would be just fine. 81, who did the United States fight in World War II? Japan, Germany, and Italy, they together formed what were called the Axis powers. You could also say the Nazis, or you could say any one of these countries. You don't need to write all three. You can if you'd like, though. 82, before he was president, Eisenhower was a general in what war? It was World War II. He was one of the heroes during World War II. We have a few generals that we consider heroes during World War II, but perhaps General Eisenhower was the greatest of those heroes because he was the general who led the D-Day invasion, June of 1944, when the Allies landed in Normandy and led the final offensive that would ultimately end the war in Europe, where they captured the German capital of Berlin and led to the end of World War II in Europe and end of Nazi Germany as well. Number 83, during the Cold War, what was the main concern of the United States? No, it was not frostbite. It was communism, because the Cold War was a rivalry, an intense rivalry and competition between the United States. We're a capitalist, primarily a capitalist economy, right? We believe in a free market where the private sector, for the most part, is free to set their own prices, and the law of supply and demand kind of determines how much things should cost, and whereas in communism, prices are fixed. Most private property is taken over by the government, and under a system of communism, it's you need to have an oppressive government that often takes away people's rights in order to kind of keep that system of socialism, that system of public ownership of private lands going. So today there are only 4 communist countries in existence. It's Vietnam, North Korea, Cuba, and China. And so in one way or the other, all 4 of these countries have a repressive form of government where they take away people's rights. We talked about this a lot in class. They ban certain forms of communication, or they strictly censor certain forms of communication. We talked about how the cartoon character, the Disney character Winnie the Pooh, is banned in China because somebody in China thought that Winnie the Pooh looked like the leader Xi Jinping, and so that's censored. You can't have the cartoon character Winnie the Pooh. Can't mention him. Can't talk about him. Can't have him at all. So that's just one example of the way that they repress free speech and other freedoms in communist countries. Okay, number 84. What movement tried to end racial discrimination? That was called the Civil Rights Movement, right? The Civil Rights Movement. Really, I would say the Civil Rights Movement started in the 1940s. And then went into the 1950s and 1960s as kind of what we consider to be the Civil Rights Movement. Some would say that the Civil Rights Movement still continues to this day, but mostly when we study it historically, we're going from the late 1940s into the end of the 1960s. Okay, number 85, what did Martin Luther King Jr. do? He fought for civil rights, worked for the equality of all Americans. And he was primarily doing that work in the late 1950s and then in the 1960s until he was assassinated. He was shot and killed on April 4th, 1968. Number 86, what major event happened on September 11th, 2001? There was a terrorist attack. You could say that terrorists attacked the United States, or you could just simply say a terrorist attack. Please do not answer this question with 9/11. Do not answer, what happened on September 11th? 9/11, that's not an acceptable answer. But terrorist attack on the United States, that would be acceptable. 87, name one American Indian tribe in the United States. There are several, and you can choose from any one of these, or there are hundreds more. So you can choose any, I believe it asks for just one, so you can name any one. 88, one of the 2 longest rivers in the United States. They flow into one another. Well, in fact, more specifically, the Missouri River flows into the Mississippi River. So Mississippi or Missouri Rivers, either one of those is an acceptable answer for this question. Number 89, the ocean on the west coast. That, of course, is our ocean, the one we're closest to, the Pacific Ocean. And then on the other side, the Atlantic coast, the east coast is the Atlantic Ocean. We sometimes call them the Pacific Coast and the Atlantic Coast. Okay, 91, name one U.S. territory. These are the acceptable answers for U.S. territories: Puerto Rico, the United States Virgin Islands, American Samoa, Northern Mariana Islands, or Guam. Hawaii is an answer I sometimes get. That's incorrect because Hawaii is now a state. It was a federal territory, was a United States territory from 1898 to 1959, but then it became a state, and so now Hawaii is a state, just like Alaska is a state. So the territory phase is what you have to go through first, for the most part, before you can become a state. There were a couple of exceptions. Texas, for example, just went straight from, it was a republic, they were their own country, and then immediately just became a state and did not have to go through the territory phase. California, we also did not need to go through the territory phase. We just went straight from being owned by Mexico to then being the independent Bear Flag Republic, or the Republic of California, and then we instantly became a state as well in 1850. So, but for the most part, most other states started out in the territory phase. So, students ask the question, what is, if we were going to have a new state, if we were going to have a 51st state, what would that most likely be? Right now, the one that seems most ready is Puerto Rico, although that hasn't happened yet. But if Puerto Rico, if they were to vote, the people of Puerto Rico were to vote and said they were in favor of statehood, and then Congress would have to approve it, and then Puerto Rico could become the 51st state. All right, 92, name one state that borders Canada. We'll just pick any one of those that's in the northernmost part of our country. I would choose Alaska just because they have the longest border with Canada, but you can choose any one of these you wish. Number 93, one state that borders Mexico. There are only four, and going from west to east, those would be California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. Next, the capital of the United States, of course, is Washington, D.C., and then where is the Statue of Liberty? I would just say New York Harbor if I were answering this question, but there are other acceptable answers as well, including Liberty Island, New Jersey, which Liberty Island is actually a little bit closer to New Jersey than it is to New York. You could also say in the Hudson River, New York Harbor is the mouth of the Hudson River. So any one of those is acceptable. Ellis Island would not be acceptable. It is on Liberty Island, not Ellis Island. They're close, but they're two different islands. 96, why does the flag have 13 stripes? Of course, it's because of the original 13 colonies. And for a similar reason, why does the flag have 50 stars? Because we currently have 50 states in the United States, 1 star per state, which goes back to the Puerto Rico question. If Puerto Rico or any of our other territories become a state, would we have to add another star to the flag? Yes, absolutely we would. Yes, we've done that every time. Every time we've added a new state, there's been a new star. So there would be no different if we added Puerto Rico or any other territory became a state. 98, the name of our national anthem, of course, it is the Star-Spangled Banner. We'll learn a lot more about that when we study the War of 1812. 99, when do we celebrate Independence Day? Hopefully you know this month and day. It is July 4th. That's what we celebrate, the date, the anniversary of our American independence. And then finally, 100, name 2 national U.S. holidays. You can name any one of these. Just don't say Halloween or Valentine's Day or St. Patrick's Day. Those are not national holidays. They're not recognized by Congress. All of these are. Students often ask, well, why not Mother's Day or Father's Day or Easter? It's because those days always fall on a Sunday. And Sundays are always federal days off. The post office is closed. Federal buildings and offices are closed. So that's why those are not federal holidays, although they might be if they did not already fall on a Sunday. Okay, well, that is question number 100, and so we are at the end of our civics exam. Hope you have a great time studying, and good luck whenever you take your USCIS civics exam. Thanks so much, and have a great day. Bye-bye.